Hello there, and here we are. Team, I'm going to go live for an hour. That's something I've been doing wherever you're watching this, whether that's Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. And we're going to do it for about an hour. And it's what I've been doing at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays for the last few weeks. And this is going to be the last one I do. Oh, no. For anyone who's been tuning into those, really, really grateful to have had you as part of it. Today we are signing off, and we're signing off with a subject that is not quite as black letter law as some of the previous chats we've had. We're signing off on something I get asked to talk about, sadly, more often than I get asked to talk about derivative actions and that sort of stuff. We're going to be talking about my approach as a lawyer to using the internet to build a legal practice. The format is going to be a little bit looser. We might be done a little bit quicker. And if you've got questions, this will be a particularly good session for you to come ask them. So basically, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to have a bit of a chat about using the internet as a lawyer. I'm going to have a bit of a chat about my method for using the internet as a lawyer. And then we're going to have a chat about some suggestions that I'll make for you to think about in your practice. So I've got a nice big pot of tea. I've got a lovely greeting from Mina. Mina, delighted to have your company. It's fantastic. And my favorite friend, LinkedIn user, is definitely going to miss these sessions. LinkedIn user, I don't know why we can't show your no doubt lovely name, but it's lovely to have your company too. So let us get into it. So what I say is, as lawyers, that our clients aren't moving online. They've moved. It's happened. The horse has bolted. Whatever analogy you'd like to use, it has happened now. So the idea of the internet being a part of what our clients might think about doing in future, no, that's happened. And so what I say is that if we're interested in being relevant to our clients' lives, we are going to have to do the same. So regardless of whether you like social media, regardless of whether you get social media, what I say is that your clients do. What I say is that if your competitors don't yet, then they will soon. And so what I say is that if you're a lawyer thinking about what you want to get done, making use of the internet or any other asset available to you, is you want to become known, you want to become liked, and you want to become trusted. And we're going to come back to these words known, liked, trusted a little later. And as we do, I'm going to nudge you in the direction of this guy called Chris Hargraves, who has a business of that name and really useful resources of that name. And with the greatest of respect, you may get more value reading about what he's up to than engaging with me here. So today, what we're going to talk about is lawyers and branding. We're going to talk about what I'm trying to do. We're going to have a detailed discussion of the precise nuts and bolts of my approach. Then I'm going to make some suggestions for some things you might like to do. Okay, and it's going to be fun. We're going to have some sips of tea along the way. And basically what I want to do is work through my approach, work through my reasons for it, and then allow you either to adopt that wholesale, be like, yep, I'll do that, or allow you to say, I don't like that, let's avoid all of that, or potentially to sort of cherry pick things that interest you or things that might be relevant to you. So hopefully that's an approach that'll bring you some value. And as I say, if you've got questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ping off a little message. Carl, great to see you. Beth, great to see you. Hannah, great to see you. Lovely to have all your company. It's a very pleasant thing to do on a Tuesday at lunchtime. And as you can tell, my notes, so you're the camera just there, and my notes are just there. So sometimes it looks like I'm making eye contact with you, sometimes with my notes. So forgive me for the wandering eyes, as it were. So as I said, the view I take is that our clients aren't moving online, they've moved. And as I say, in those circumstances, your goal ought to be to become known and liked and trusted. And so the technology available to you to do this is completely unparalleled. You, in your back pocket or in your jacket pocket or on the table across from you, have a supercomputer that fits in the palm of your hand, and it is completely amazing that you have it. And that is the tool that I say will allow you, as it has allowed me, to build a strategy for building a legal practice online. And what I say is that this new landscape allows you to scale your quarterly beers with Julie, where Julie might be a referral source of yours, and you may take the view that you need to catch up with her once a quarter to make sure you keep those referrals running. It allows you to scale those quarterly beers into a more systematic and scalable, sorry to use that word, approach. And I say it's a way to better leverage your time and your effort. LinkedIn user, great to see you. And Hudas, great to see you. Hudas, most photogenic man on LinkedIn. And I challenge anyone to best me on that suggestion. Okay, so let's lean into what I'm trying to do, and we might start with what I'm trying to do because that'll give you context for the actual nuts and bolts of why I do the things I do. And then we might be able to reverse engineer thinking about you and your practice. So we're going to think about what you're trying to do and reverse engineer some techniques that you might like to use. So in my practice, what I'm trying to do is basically build a corporate and commercial litigation practice. And the way I'm going to do that, I say, is generate one very large piece of commercial litigation per year for 35 years. Great. So I'm just trying to get one matter a year. And you might say that's easy. Well, it's going sort of okay, but we'll have to see how we go. And essentially the rhetorical question I had to ask myself at the start of forming this strategy and starting to use the internet is, right, how are we going to go about building this one large matter per year practice if my current client base is not sufficient to deliver that? And so the answer I am operating on, and I don't want to give the impression that, it's all over and it's done. It's a fight week in, day out, these sorts of things. But the approach I've adopted is that I want to build relationships with the trusted advisors of potential litigants, right? So because I act for businesses, because I act for companies, because I act for shareholders in companies and directors in companies, there are quite literally at least hundreds of thousands, but probably a million or marginally more potential clients, right, who I could potentially act for. And so if I was going to try to get at those million or so people, I would go mad because I would be unable to focus my attention. And so the strategy I've formed is that I'm trying to approach them at one level of abstraction above that. I'm looking to bring value to the trusted advisors of those clients. So people like financial advisors, insolvency practitioners, accountants, non-exec directors, management consultants, in-house counsel, experts, these sorts of people, the sorts of people who our million or so potential clients would say, hey, you don't know a lawyer who knows anything like this, do you? Well, hopefully using my internet strategy, I'll marginally increase the chances of one of those trusted advisors saying, do you know what? I actually do know a lawyer who I've heard talk about these things. And so that's essentially the strategy. Mina, that's very kind and wrong, but very kind. So I thank you for it. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to go about building relationships with this sort of trusted advisor class, if I put it that way? How am I going to be the person that the accountant calls when their client is in trouble? And essentially the elevator pitch is that I want to become Batman to the accountants of Sydney, right? I want to be the person who they turn to when they're in a sharp spot and they go, I don't quite know how I'm going to advise on the way the board of this company's operating. I don't quite know what I'm going to do about this dispute. Better pick up the bat phone and call James. That's the sort of light-hearted elevator pitch, Batman for the accountants of Sydney. But how do you become Batman to the accountants of Sydney? How do you bring that value? And the idea, this is a completely stolen analogy, is jab, 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 right hook. I know nothing about boxing, but the way this metaphor works, as I understand it, is that you jab in order to maneuver your opponent around the ring, and you right hook to try to do some damage. And so you do strategic jabs, jab, jab, jab. And if we use the metaphor, we give value, give, give, give. And then once we've done some maneuvering, given some value, we're then in a position to ask. We're then in a position to right hook. And so we'll use that jab, 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 right hook metaphor to give, 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 ask. And so what I will do, the form of giving that I will try to do strategically, we'll dive into a little bit later. But essentially, I want to give valuable knowledge. I just want to be someone whose face is associated with teaching an accountant, for example, a little bit more about some sections of the Corporations Act that they didn't know much about. So I want to give to that accountant and give and then give, and then potentially put myself in the position to maybe ask something one day. So I might say something like, "G'day, Blogsy, can we go grab a coffee for you and I to chat about your client base?" And that is the sort of give, 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 ask. And the answer to the ask might be no. So it's not give, 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 take. And it's Hoodis rightly highlights here the person who I've stolen this idea from. Hopefully I name dropped before. Gary V is the sort of shorthand. Gary Vaynerchuk, Vaynerchuk, is well worth a stalk and a follow. But essentially that's the strategy I'm using. Give, 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 trying to give valuable information, ask, trying to put myself in a position where I'm able to start building these relationships. Michael asks an interesting point. Any reason for restricting to Sydney? It's where I practice, Michael, and it's where my expertise is, but I don't really have a deeper answer for you. It's a really good question, and perhaps lack of ambition is another reason, but it's not a considered restriction. It's more just the nature of where my head's at with my practice building at the moment. And I'm sorry for giving you such a vague answer. Happy to dive more deeply if there are any more depths into that. But thank you for the question. And so what I'm trying to do is do that give, 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 ask, that provision of value and that ask at scale, and doing it in a non-transactional way. And so hopefully by doing it at scale, so by doing it to 50 people, by say putting out a video case note about a recent decision, that hopefully by doing that at scale, I'm not putting pressure on any one relationship. So we used the example of getting beers with Julie earlier in this talk. And you might say, right, Julie, I need to really focus on getting beers with Julie so that I can get referrals from Julie. Well, hopefully, because I'm taking a slightly broader approach, and because I'm using the internet to scale this approach, Julie can be one of 50 rather than one of 3, for example. And so I don't need to hone in and apply lots of pressure on Julie. I can instead be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more hands-off and low pressure, and that I'm able to just continue to give value into the marketplace. And if something comes from that, well and good. The second benefit is that if I've had beers with Julie in 2018 and that went well, then it's easier for me to remain front of Julie's mind in future because I've got a video popping up into her phone every so often. And she'll go, "Oh yeah, that's that guy I had beers with 2 years ago." And that will be the way that the theory goes. Some lovely comments here. Michael, that's very kind of you to say that I'm reaching people in other cities. I hope that's right. And Mina's invited me to go to the High Court. Mina, I'll get some money in trust and then happy to march off to the High Court. That sounds like good fun. And that's basically the extent of my goals. My goals are get one big commercial litigation matter a year. And big should be from start to finish, fees of several $100,000 and perhaps even more than that. If I can get one of those per year, then we're doing well. And who am I getting it from? I'm not getting it from the million or so potential clients. I'm looking at that trusted advisor level, the level above. So hoping that by giving value to the accountants, the financial advisors, the management consultants, the non-exec directors, the insolvency practitioners, the in-house counsel, And even the lawyers practice, even lawyers in private practice, but who practice in a different area, or even lawyers in private practice in my area who are conflicted out, who think I know the area and so I'll reflect well and do a good job for their clients. This is essentially the strategy. So let's dive into my approach. Let's dive into the actual nuts and bolts of what I'm doing day in, day out. How am I, just to ask this rhetorically, because I'm going to answer it, so I'll start with asking it rhetorically. How am I doing this giving at scale? How are we throwing jabs? What is the actual literal tactical process? The short answer is I do case notes, which is to say a summary of a recent legal case in the form of a video, weekly-ish, and I publish it in a few different places. And in between doing those case summaries or legal decision summaries, which I call case notes, I'll do some other stuff too. That's essentially the approach. And just by way of 45 seconds of autobiography, the background is I started lurking on LinkedIn in early 2018. And while I was lurking there, I'd write a few written case notes in a sort of chatty tone and try to summarize cases of some complexity in a fairly short space of time with quite approachable language. And after spending a bit of time on LinkedIn, I started to see videos popping up and I took some value from those. And I thought, I reckon I could have a crack at doing a video version of these case summaries. And so I tried to do these legal decision summaries or case notes in an arena that I associate with trying to build business as a litigator. It's a coffee shop. And so it became coffee and a case note. And so I do these videos where you will see me, if I've been effective in my distribution, where you'll see me in a coffee shop having a sip of a coffee and saying the judge said this, the plaintiff said this, the defendant said that. Hope that helped. Goodbye. And hopefully it brings value to that class of trusted advisors we were speaking about. So sorry for that indulgent autobiography. Now, what's the approach I try to adopt? It's been called pillar marketing, and this is another idea I stole from this guy, adopted or took or borrowed or stole or whatever line we want to use from this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, who I would encourage you all to stalk now. And if you're thinking about stalking him, do that. Get out of here, go stalk him. And if you want to come back here, that's fine. But his approach to marketing of anything, including professional services, I think is supremely valuable and worth taking careful note of. So I adopt what I understand is called a pillar approach, where I'll take one central pillar of content. And so for me, that central pillar is going to be a corporate and commercial decision of the Supreme Court of New South Wales or the Court of Appeal. And from that pillar, from that central thing, we're going to spin off a number of other pieces of content. What are they going to be? Essentially, the content I'm going to use or I'm going to create from this pillar. So there's been a decision about breach of director's duties and the Supreme Court's handed it down. And so that's my pillar. What are we going to take from this pillar? Well, we're going to take some written content, we're going to take some video content, and we're going to take some audio content. And we're going to put it in a number of different places. And we're going to get to a spot where from each pillar, we're going to have about 25 or 30 pieces of content. And the reason I'm pleased to have stolen this idea from this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, is that the guy you should be stealing, the guy whose ideas you should be stealing is this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. There you are, Mina. Hope that helps. Hope that makes sense. Gary Vaynerchuk. Yep, the name's in the chat. Good. I think that worked. There we are. The reason I say his idea is one that is so much worth stealing is that you're able to leverage your efforts. So I'll be able to explain that better once I go through the pillar approach I take. So one of the areas I publish is on LinkedIn. Some of you are watching this on LinkedIn. The nature of LinkedIn is the line I enjoy is that it's Facebook, but for even older people, which I really enjoy. And I think that's a good fun. The reason I say LinkedIn's relevant is that at least some of your clients, past, present, future, are there. And so you've got business development opportunities, and you've got client maintenance opportunities as well. I say that your competitors are there. And so if they're there, then it's pretty valuable for you to be there. And I say that your colleagues, past, present, future, are going to be there. And so there are opportunities for you to build your reputation within the profession, and also to potentially build your reputation for juniors who might be interested in coming and working with you. And they might have only learned you exist and learned you might be a nice person to work for, having seen the video content you're publishing on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has served as the primary launch point for me in the development of my marketing strategy, my approach. And as we talk about my approach, I might just highlight a really useful comment from Hudis. What Gary says is, what I might just endorse what Hudis says there and just take a sip of tea. And sorry, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can see I've just highlighted a comment here. If you can't see a comment, can you give me a thumbs down? If you can see a comment, can you give me a thumbs up? Hopefully these comments are coming up on your screen. I'll just take the absence of any thumbs as a thumbs up and keep going. Let's do that. And so LinkedIn has served as the primary spot for me. And so what I do is I take this pillar. Remember how we've got this pillar sitting here, and this is a decision of the Supreme Court of New South Wales or the Court of Appeal. And I'll use this pillar to do a written blog post, essentially a written status update. Hey, there was a plaintiff and there was a defendant and the judge said this, blah, blah, blah. That's one piece of content. That's my written status update on LinkedIn. Then I'll go to the coffee shop. I will set up my phone. I'll put it on a tripod and I'll sit there and go, blah, blah, blah. Here's a case note. Guess what? The judge said this, the plaintiff said this, the defendant said that, and I'll film that video. And so from this same pillar, from this one decision, we've now got one piece of content for LinkedIn being the written bit, and now we've got one video for LinkedIn. But then, while I'm still in the coffee shop recording away on the phone and tripod, I'm not going to stop recording. I'm just going to put my head down and put it back up again and go, hi there, team. I just recorded a case note where a plaintiff said something crazy. Anyway, if you want to see the full-length note, I'll link it up for you. And so essentially it's a preview, more or less, for the case note I've just done. And then I'm still recording, right? Still in the coffee shop. I'll go head down again, head up again, and go, being a director's crazy. Guys, if you're a director of a company, you got to make sure you look out for this, that, and the other. Cheers. And I put my head down again, head back up. Say, hey, guys, I do a podcast. Would love it if you come and hang out and podcast and go subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And so in essence, from this one trip to the coffee shop, I've got one 5-minute video, let's say, that is the case summary. I've got one 45-second trailer or teaser or preview or whatever you want to call it. I've then got 45 seconds of chat about director's duties. And I've got 45 seconds of chat trying to ask you to follow my podcast. And so from this one pillar, we've actually got 4 bits of video content and 1 bit of written content. Because remember, we've got the written typed up version, then we've got the recorded long version, and we've got those 3 other little snippet videos. Don't forget that for these 1 long video and 3 snippet videos, we can also publish all of those on Facebook. So now we've got 9 pieces of content, and we publish all of those if we want on Instagram. So we've got 13 pieces of content. We can publish the shorter of those on Twitter. So now we've got 16 pieces of content or whatever it may be. And so now from this one pillar, we're now on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're going to take the longer case note, the 5-minute note, put it on YouTube. So we're now on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. The shorter videos we're going to put on Twitter, so we're there too. We're going to save the video as audio only, and we're going to upload that as a podcast using the app Anchor. And Anchor doesn't have any special fancy spelling. It's just spelled like the thing you throw off the side of a boat. And basically, you just find your video, click save as audio only, upload it to Anchor. And now we put that in about 9 different places that provide for podcasts. And that's the really surprisingly easy process. And so then we're in 25 places. And then don't forget TikTok, where you try to do I try to do a 15-second version of the case note. Hey guys, we had a plaintiff and a defendant. The plaintiff said this, defendant said that. Crazy times. Cheers, bye. And so that's all from the same pillar. So from this same pillar, from this one decision of the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, we are extracting all of the value we possibly can in order for us to leverage the hard work I've done in reading the case and understanding it, and in making sure that by making use of all these various platforms, I am getting the biggest bang for my effort. So look, I'm time poor, you're time poor, you don't have time for this, I don't have time for this, none of us do. So how are we going to use our non-existent time in the most effective way possible? Well, the answer for me that I've arrived at is that I'm going to endeavor to use it in such a way that means I'll be published in as many different places as possible while not having to do extra work in order to do so. And this very talk is an example of that. So right now, you might be looking at me on Facebook, and you might be surprised to hear that I'm also on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And I'm also recording so it can go on a podcast. So this very talk right now is an example of me doing one set of effort and getting it published in 4 different places. Or well, depending on how many podcast providers you count, 12 different places. So it's that idea of leverage, the idea that you're able to repurpose this pillar, this big bit of hard work that you've done. You've sat down and read a decision, or you've sit down and formed a view about the 6 tips for families going through divorce, or whatever it is. You've come and formed this view, and you then want to put it in as many different places as possible to make sure that you get as much value as you can from your effort. And I skipped a few slides in my notes here, so forgive me as I just catch up. If you've got questions, do ask them, team. Yeah, I think we've been through all this. Yeah. We talked about Facebook, talked about Twitter, talked about Instagram. We talked about TikTok, notwithstanding the fact it's not on there. So let me spin around and start talking about your practice and things that you can do. And because we're talking about you, I hope you will feel unusually welcome to ask any questions you've got, because we are staring down the barrel of a big early mark, which is fine with me. But I would also want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask any questions that occur to you. So we talked about my practice. What am I trying to do? Batman to the Accountants of Sydney. How are we doing that? Well, I'm trying to take this pillar of a recent case that's going to be relevant for an accountant's clients, and I'm trying to spin it out far and wide so that my effort in understanding this one case can be leveraged in a number of different places. That's basically the plan. Right, so what about your practice? What are we going to do for you? What are you trying to achieve? How is this hanging around with some goof who's going live on a Tuesday afternoon going to help you out? Well, let's see. If you accept that your clients and prospects aren't moving online, they've moved, I say the possibility that you are overlooking the internet as a means to build your practice is upon you. So what is to be done? Well, I propose you do 2 things. First thing you do is choose a pillar, right? First thing you do is, as I've chosen these Supreme Court cases, you may go and choose whatever it might be. You might be a golf instructor, and you might say, every week I'm going to talk about a different club or whatever it is. And so let's say I'm a golf instructor, and I'm talking about how left-handed people use certain clubs. And that's my pillar for this week. And so congratulations, you've gone and chosen a pillar. That's the first thing you had to do. Second thing you had to do was to choose one place to publish. And so what you might decide is Instagram is your place. And so you might describe that you want to take a photograph of you holding the club and then 100 words of copy saying, you know what's interesting when left-handers use a 10 iron? Well, you've got to watch out for Zim Zam and the other. Whatever it is, you've done your Instagram photograph and you've done your copy. And what I say your next step is just do it again. Come back to another pillar. We're now talking about right-handers using the 3 iron or whatever it is. And you are making a post about that. So you're on Instagram with a picture of you holding the thing, 100 words of copy. Yeah, when right-handers use it, bim, bim, bim. So now we have done something. You have done something where you've gone one pillar, one piece of subject matter, and you've published it in one place. And we've done that. So what are you going to do? You're going to go choose another pillar. Oh, now it's time for the pitching wedge or whatever it's called. Great. We're going to do that. And you're going to do a post on Instagram. But I tell you what, why not just also take that same photograph and take that same written copy and just post it on Facebook as well. And so now from the one pillar, you have got a photo and some words on Instagram and a photo and some words on Facebook. So we've just doubled the amount of return you are getting for your efforts from that one pillar. And as I hope I've shown you, I've become fairly efficient at squeezing as much value from each pillar as I can. And so I can well imagine, if we're taking this bizarre golf metaphor further, that you might one day record a video where you're looking into camera saying, yeah, guys, when you're picking a thing, you want to make sure your grip's like this and like this. And so when you're in the hip transfer and swinging and golf balls, you got to make sure those golf balls go right in the hole. And that's the way to do it. Whatever. You can then imagine, I hope fairly clearly, that that video could well be published on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube and, depending on its length, on Twitter and on LinkedIn, potentially, and on wherever else it may be. And then you might go and save the audio only and upload that audio to a podcast. And so then you might have this pillar that is talking about your favorite club, the old Clubby McGee. And in doing so, you've extracted as much value as you can out of these thoughts. And the reason I say that's so important is that if you are a time-poor professional or a time-poor person of any kind, which you are, I am, and you are, that when you arrive at a pillar, when you have something you want to talk about, when you've taken the time and applied the effort to form a view about something, I want you to make sure that you're extracting as much as you can from that view. And so what I say you should do is choose a pillar. And then what I say you should do is choose a place to publish in respect of that pillar, and then do it again. And then every 6 weeks, add one more place to publish. So firstly, we've chosen golf swings. We do Instagram post. Do that for 3 months. And then after that, we start doing golf swings. We do Instagram and Facebook. And then 2 months later, we do golf swings, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then 3 months after that, we do golf swings, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And we're also doing Twitter. And we're trying to figure out a podcast. And so then in 12 months' time, between now and 12 months' time, you actually find that you've managed to populate and had a bit of a more diverse portfolio of places to publish your content. And that is about the extent of what I wanted to suggest to you. And I've been a lot faster than I'd planned to be. And so that means I'm going to get out of here fairly soon. Now, can I just bring your attention to a comment that James Wrigley's made here? James is unfailingly generous and kind as usual. He is a great exponent of this model, and I'd encourage you to follow James on LinkedIn if that's where you're seeing him here, or you'll be able to find him on Instagram as well. He's particularly strong. And what he's really good at doing is he'll do something where he'll interview someone interesting. So, for example, he'll have a client who is exiting. Sorry to turn you into a case study, James. He'll have a client who has recently sold a business. And so James is a financial advisor, and having sold a business, his client is now instantly quite wealthy. And so James will have an interesting conversation about the issues that can arise for people in that sort of position. And it'll be an interesting chat for a nice, long, juicy half hour or so that James can then turn into a podcast. But there'll also be little 2 or 3 minute snippets of wisdom and little quotes that James can then extract. And what I find as a fan of James's, and what if you choose to be a fan of James's as well, is that you will, sometimes you'll have time to sit down and watch half an hour and it'll be great. Sometimes you're going to have 25 seconds and you just want to read James a quick status update about his thoughts on founders and cashing out of startups or whatever it might be. And so sometimes you'll be able to engage with some sorts of content, but not always. And so the appropriate approach in order for James to please me as a fan of his is to hit me with different types of content at different times, because there will be times when I can't spend the time I want. There'll be times when I can. I hope that makes sense. Team, I am, as I say, I've reached the end of my notes and I'm excited to have done it. So I'm just going to go into thank you mode. These lunchtime live sessions have been good and a little demanding, and I'm really grateful for your company with all of them. If I can ask a favor, I'm a solicitor. I work at a law firm called Chamberlains, and I'd be really, really grateful if you could sling Chamberlains a follow on whatever medium you're watching this. That's Chamberlains, Chamberlins. So if you'd be interested in slinging Chamberlains a follow, I'd be really, really grateful. Apart from that, it's just a great, big, juicy thanks. Team, if you're interested in more content from me, use the hashtag coffee and a case note on whatever platform you'd like. You should be able to find me there, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's whatever. You should be able to find me if I've done my job properly. And there's nothing left to do but for me to thank you very kindly. LinkedIn user, you're very welcome, and my gratitude to you all. Look forward to chatting soon. I'll have a sip of tea, and I'll wish you the very, very best.